Is apologetics biblical? There are some Christians who feel that apologetics, that is, defending Christianity through reasoning and logical argumentation, is unbiblical, and that the only means of sharing the faith presented in the New Testament is the preaching of the gospel in the local congregation and through our good works, which cause men to glorify our Father in heaven. But are there any examples in the scriptures of the different forms of apologetics employed by the early church in the first few centuries and by Bible-believing Christians ever since? All of the apostles were sent forth by Christ to be as he was in the world and to do the works that he did. In this way, they are examples for us. The Apostle Paul, for instance, is set forth as an example for us in numerous places in the New Testament. And what did Paul do when confronted with widespread unbelief and apostasy? In Acts 17, verses 16 to 17, "Now while Paul waited for them at Athens, his spirit was stirred in him, when he saw the whole city wholly given to idolatry. Therefore disputed he in the synagogue with the Jews, and with the devout persons, and in the market daily with them that met with him." Paul began disputing with them. This might come as a shock to those who think that Christians should never show any judgment or indignation towards error and lies, so as not to offend. But please note, the Apostle Paul disputed with them, not out of anger, but of love. This love involved saying that the Athenians were superstitious, worshipping in ignorance, and needed to repent by ceasing from their idolatry. Furthermore, he quoted their own writings to justify his position and debunk theirs. This might sound harsh to many, but Paul was not being untruthful. The definitions of the words he used fitted those he was disputing with. Also, quoting their own texts was not a fleshly attempt to be big-headed and to be contentious or stir up strife, but to convince them. Paul was being as the light of the world, shining the truth on the darkness of lies. He was exposing their beliefs for what they were. Are we not called also to be the light of the world? For those who would still contend that all of this disputation must occur within the assembly of the congregation for a worship service, I would direct them to the next chapter, where we read more of Paul's disputations and proselytizing in the synagogue. Acts 18:28. "For he mightily convinced the Jews, and that publicly, showing by the scriptures that Jesus was Christ." So, brethren, earnestly contend for the faith, reprove the unfruitful works of darkness, exhort and convince the gainsayers with sound doctrine, and yes, be ready to give every man an answer. And do not be ashamed to do this publicly.